Hey everyone, this is Mark. I needed to do a little bit of an introduction into this episode because we went a little over, like an hour and a half over our normal episode time. So we did talk about Mystics in Bali. You're welcome. So if you watched it, we did talk. This episode is about Mystics in Bali. I will be posting the extra things that we talked about in a supplemental episode later. Not too much later after this episode drops. So thanks for listening. Subscribe, post, leave comments. I'm thinking about giving out our email address if you want to send us messages. I don't know yet, but either way, again, this is episode 6. We talked about Mystics in Bali, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for listening. I hope everyone's doing okay out there. Wear a mask. Do not go to any Vanilla Ice concerts, even if Color Me Bad is opening up for them. We love y'all. We miss y'all. I hope you enjoy it. Bye. All right, right now.
Wait.
Can you hear me or no?
Yeah, it's kind of breaking up though.
Okay, I can hear you.
Okay, now it's good up.
Now it's better?
Yeah.
Okay. What's up, dude?
Nothing. At home. I'm at home. That's all I can do.
Well, it's June 27th. Oh, crap. That reminds me. I got to call my niece. Today's her birthday. It's June 27th, Saturday. Yesterday, the governor said bars can't be open anymore. And today, we got a Amber Alert for our sanity. That's something I never thought I'd see before. I think maybe
Yeah.
I played it in my mind before, like, oh, the world's coming to an end. We're getting asteroids hitting us. We're getting invaded by aliens. Not that stay home so
No.
people don't die.
That's fun to know that when we're gonna die, we're just gonna get a text about it. like in all the old movies, it was like the emergency broadcast system on TV.
I know the what do they call it? The air raid alarm. Air raid alarm.
Yeah. Now we just get a text.
YOLO. You're about to die. But oh well. It's like I sent somebody that meme. What did it say? Disappointed, but not surprised.
Yeah. It's weird.
Any hoozle. Oh, Andrew. I have to say, this movie, out of any movie I've seen in a very long time, really kicked my balls, my intellect in the balls the entire time I was watching it.
You're welcome.
I was like, hold on a second. I think my brain just crashed. Mystics in Bali. How did you even find out about this movie?
I follow several Instagram movie pages and like movie fan groups on Instagram, and several of them had posted the clip of her head going in between that lady's legs. And,
That's where your brother got reanimated, right? When you showed me that text, I was like, "What is he talking about?" And I was like, "Oh, okay."
Well, they kept putting that clip, but everybody was like in on the joke, so nobody would ever mention what movie it was. And then there were some people that were like, "What movie is that?" And even I was like, "Yeah, what movie is that?" And no one would ever comment. And then I follow Mondo Macabro, which put out the DVD version of it. And they posted about it one time, and I was like, "Oh, that's that movie." So I bought it blindly. And
How much did you pay for that?
this one was about like 14
That's
on
not
their
bad.
website.
That's not bad.
Um,
Oh my
but I
gosh.
was like, "Oh man, this is trash. Like, this is right up my alley trash that I love.
Oh my God. I basically wrote notes for every single scene.
Oh,
This is how
but
infuriated this movie made me.
I think I told you and my brother, I was like, the continuity in here is horrible. Like, just in
Well,
regards to like their wardrobe. Like in one scene, he's wearing a t-shirt, and he goes to the other room, and he's wearing a different t-shirt.
well, I'm gonna get into that with you because I now when you commented to me on that when we were talking earlier in the week, you're
Mhm.
like the continuity. They're like 1 minute, yeah, like you said, 1 minute that she's got on a dress, the next minute she's got on a shirt. But I'm gonna tell you why it looks like that.
Okay,
There's 26 scenes in this movie, and it's only an hour and 21 minutes long. So there's
yeah,
roughly a scene every 5 minutes. There's a new scene in this movie.
okay.
And every time it seems like every time they go to a new scene, it seems like like they just
That's where
started.
they just
Yeah,
started
they
again.
started filming in the middle of the scene. They're like, go ahead and start. They're like, action, and then the direct the it was almost like the photographer was like, oh shit, I forgot to hit record, and he's hit record anyways. Well, first
Hey
off,
guys, can we reshoot that scene from yesterday?
like, no time. Well, first off, this movie was never intended for people in anywhere else but except for Indonesia. Or I guess it's Bali and what it's Bali because they're all Balinese. And these because it's obvious because if you don't know any of this like folklore, what they're
Yeah,
talking about, they talk about it like they know like everybody who's watching the movie knows exactly what they're talking about. I'm like,
right.
what the fuck is going on here? Uh And apparently there's a on I was gonna ask you. So the version that's on YouTube is the English version. Like they're American, but it's supposedly there's also a dub where the lady's Australian, and I really wanted to listen to that one. Is that one on the DVD?
No.
Yeah,
Well, she
believe.
says she's from Australia, but she doesn't sound Australian.
So then you must have the one that she says she's Australian on the DVD because on YouTube she says she's American. Even he,
Uh,
when he's talking to the witch, he's like, "Oh, she's from the USA."
no, I remember he said Australian,
Yeah, so then you must
but
have the Australian
she
cut.
doesn't sound Australian.
No.
On my version, she doesn't sound Australian.
So, oh my God. Okay. So let's get into this. No exposition. So this it starts off with this monster dancing, which looks cool. Looks cool. I don't know what monster it is. Like I said, if like I have no idea who this monster is.
Yeah,
Dance at the beginning, and then it just goes right into the plot of the movie. No
right.
exposition. It's like a one sentence exposition. And this one, the girl's coming from America. She's interested in dark magic, and she's thinking about writing a book because she was in Africa and she learned voodoo apparently. And she's like,
Right.
"Oh, I want to learn about the dark mystics here." And this guy, well, the first thing I noticed, he's like, "Oh, I couldn't imagine somebody so beautiful would be into dark magic." I'm like, "What? Only ugly people are into dark magic?"
Well, that witch is was
Um,
pretty ugly.
and he starts talking. This guy is his name the same name in yours? She calls him Kendra,
Mahendra.
Mahendra, and then she starts calling him Hendra, right?
Yeah.
Um, so he's like, yeah, I never thought anybody as beautiful as you would be into that. She's like, well, yeah, I just figure the way to learn it is just the way to write about it and to learn about it is just go learn it myself. So that's what I was in Africa. I just went and learned voodoo myself, and that's how I wrote it.
Yeah.
That's how I figured it out. I was like, okay. So then and they're just walking. You don't have no exposition of where they're going. And they're just talking about black magic. And he's like, yeah, I heard about this leak magic. It's supposed to be the most mystic one. You're supposed to be able to change into other things. You could even change into a
They
tree.
pronounce
Isn't that weird?
they pronounce it leak.
Leyak.
Oh, okay.
It's yeah, it's Leak, but they do
Yeah.
pronounce it Leyak.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. That's what they were saying on mine.
yeah, so that's the first scene. Next scene, boom, you're in some kind of show, which I'm assuming after I was watching the whole movie, I was like, well, it must be like a little dramatization of this whole Leak.
Right.
And it just out of nowhere, he's like, yeah, they say the Leyak is the most dangerous magic, that you can even murder with it. The thing of it is that murder is untraceable. I was like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Now they're talking like, are they trying to get away with the crime now?
Well, they both seem so naive about it or dumb. Where like even she's just like, I finally learned all the black magic.
It's
he's like,
it's like,
and he's like, I'm so glad she taught you the black magic. And I'm like, what the hell's wrong with y'all?
I was thinking, but that's what I'm thinking. Like, it wasn't intended for English speaking audiences. So
Well, I know it was probably
I'm
lost
like,
in the
I'm
translation.
like, how did they pick this up? Did they just decide, oh, hey, we got this movie? You think because I think it was 81. I don't know. I forgot it. I read somewhere, forgot how long it took for them to finally come to the United States. But I'm like, who bought this? And did they take it? They're like, oh yeah, we'll take that movie. And and then the people who made it were like, well, here's the translation. Ah, don't worry about it. We'll figure it out. You know what I mean? It's like they just decided on their
Yeah.
own version. It's very,
So
the dialogue is very Americanized.
so I see that it wasn't released on DVD. I don't know if this is when it came to America, but it was released on DVD in 2003 by the label Mondo Macabro, which has gone out of print. In October 2007, they re-released the film with a high definition transfer from the original negative. Uh,
But this dialogue is very like 60s Shaw Brother dialogue. Like it
yeah.
sounds though, you know what I mean? So it's like it's old dialogue, like old dialogue. Jesus Christ. So the next scene, so they were watching that thing. Um, next scene, oh, where is it?
Excuse me.
I'm trying to think. So the next scene, oh, he's walking her home, right? And she's like, "Where are
Hmm.
you going?" And that's a whole other weird thing. I don't know if it's like a cultural thing because they're flirting a lot, but when he's like, it's time for him to go into the kill, he's like, "Oh, I gotta leave." Or he goes in like he's gonna kiss her,
Yeah,
and then he puts his face on her cheek. You know, he
yeah.
puts her lips on her cheek. So she's like, "Oh, you're going home? Yeah, I'm going home." He goes, "Don't worry, I promise. I promise you." No, see, this is how fucked up this movie is. I'm gonna have to put it on while we're talking about it because yeah. So here they're at the dancing, and then oh yeah, they're at the dancing, and then yeah, see, I did write it down wrong. So they're at the dancing, and then he's walking her home, and this is the first appearance of no. So he's walking her home, and this is another thing. This is another thing. So he's walking her home after that little show they went to, where all the people
Yeah.
were playing at the thing. So he's walking her home, and that's another thing I was laughing at. It's like she's like, Kendra, you have to help me. I'm like, I don't remember him like not wanting to help her. You know what I mean? So right away
Right.
she's like, you must help me. He's like, well, all right, I'll help you. And they start. That's why I think this is very Americanized because he starts calling her a master right away. He starts calling these Leyak masters like they're like it's a martial art.
No, I
You know
think
what I
that's
mean?
just lost in the translation.
Um,
I just don't think there probably wasn't an American word for it, so they just used that.
yeah. So it's like so he's yeah. So she's like, okay, I'm going home. So he leaves, and then the next thing you know, he goes, don't worry, I got tomorrow planned. So the next thing you know, they're going. He's taking her on a trip. They're on a boat. Oh no, that's right. I did write it down right. This is the first part. That's the first randomly. This is the first appearance of the unknown follower. Like they
Yeah,
give each other a kiss, and all of a sudden it just pans to a lady staring at them through the trees in the middle of the night.
and she smells a skull.
So that's scene two. Next day they're on a boat. They're going somewhere, and they get off. And it turns out it's a cemetery. That's where they're going to do. They're going to go hang out in the cemetery. And what is the first thing she fucking does as soon as they walk into the second cemetery? Do you remember?
Um,
She
no,
stops. She stops and she picks up a skull and she smells it.
that's what I said. Yeah, she smells the skull.
And she's like, "Oh, the rumors are true. It doesn't have any smell." I'm like, "Who the fuck picks up a?" First of all, why are there bones just hanging out in the cemetery? Second of all,
Yeah,
is that
like,
why? How
and
is that like your first thing?
there was a whole bunch of skulls there,
And that's where
and
I'm like,
they were just cool with it. Like, let's just walk through here.
and that's what I'm talking about. Like it's always like in the middle of a scene, and she's like, "Oh, so the rumors are true." He's like, "Oh, you've heard that too." She goes, "Yeah, I heard it from your friends." I'm like, "What friends? Like we've only seen them two in the first 5 minutes
Yeah,
already."
she just
Um,
got there.
yeah, and oh god, man. it's like, and so they go down and they sit down, and she's like, "Do you believe in it?" He's like, "Well," he goes, "the reputation is," he goes, "I do." It's like, he's like, it's, oh my God, it's just ridiculous. Like, he can't say if he does believe in it, and then he does say that he believes in it, and then he's like, "Oh, the reputation is a little bit out of hand." He goes, "But I have to believe in it." And then they kiss, and she's she's like, "Oh, we better get out of
Uh,
here. We're probably the first people to kiss in the graveyard." He's like, "Let's get out of here before the ghosts get mad." And that whole little part of
wow.
that scene, if you don't pay attention, you notice it at the last minute. That girl's
The
way in the
girls in the
back of
background.
them,
Yeah.
watching them kiss. Um, yeah, she's like begging him to help. I'm like, he's not even. I don't remember him not promising not to help her. Um, Let me see if whatever anything from that scene. Yeah, so he's like, yeah, that's this whole movie. He seems like he doesn't know anything about it really. Like he's just heard about it. But the more as you go into the movie, all of a sudden he's
He
like an
does know.
expert. Yeah, he all of a sudden he's like an expert in it.
Yeah. But that's what I'm saying. Like they made them both seem, or him seem in particular, like naive about it.
Right. Um, yeah, she's like, we have to clear our mind to learn it, right? Like what is going on here? Yeah, this is the second. I'm trying to see what else it says in here. Um, yeah, she's like, yeah, he says something. Oh, he's like, the reputation is over dramatized. So she's like, so you don't believe in it? And then he says, well, I have to believe in it. I'm like, oh my God. Um, so they leave the cemetery. It's day. Next scene,
Excuse me.
this is the next scene is the first of his creep appearances because she's just laying down in her bed, and
Oh.
all of a sudden, she opens her eyes and he's just staring at her while she's sleeping. Oh, and she's like, oh, by the way, I was able to get a hold of a Leyak master to meet up with you. She's like, oh, great. I was like, oh God, here we go. Um, Again, master. I don't know. That kind of threw me off. I'm like, it's so Americanized, like because it's from the East. Everybody, I guess, everybody thinks like a martial art. And then that's another theme throughout this whole movie. Oh, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. You know, I killed somebody. Oh, don't worry. It wasn't on you.
Yeah.
You didn't mean to do it.
But I'm a
uh,
murderer.
so next scene, I'm telling you, these scenes are like 2 minutes long. Next scene, they're in the jungle. And did you notice there was in your version? Did you notice like when the witch would show up, all of a sudden there was like a lot of howling, like a lot of I don't know if it was werewolves howling or dogs howling, but that's what they were throwing in the background, like oh, it was
Oh, I didn't
all.
hear it. I didn't hear it because she was laughing so loud. And I told my brother, like I texted him, I was like, this Leak witch needs to chill with the laughing. He goes, that's like 50% of the dialogue.
Well, that's what he says in this version. So they're in the jungle in the night. All of a sudden, it starts. They start seeing something move, and then all of a sudden it starts raining. He's like, and then what is
Yeah.
his comment? He's like, "Hey, we're gonna have to get used to this kind of abnormal stuff." She's like, "Okay," and they think it's like the ground moving, and then they see the thing in there, and then she's like, "Why isn't it moving?" He's like, "Maybe it wants to make sure that we're the only people here that can see it." Oh my God! And then this is his quote when she starts laughing. He's like, he goes, oh my God, that's their trademark. That's the Leyak Masters trademark. And
They're annoying.
it's part, and I don't know, I listened to it like 9 times. I couldn't get what he's saying. He says something to the effect of like, that's their most either dangerous plan or dangerous clan. And then she asks him a question, and he's like, "Yeah." Like that's another weird thing. She'll give a whole thing of dialogue, and his comment to the whole thing of dialogue, he's like, "Huh." You know, that's how he comes. He's like, "Huh."
Dude, that's most of those the foreign movies that were badly dubbed from the late 70s and 80s. Those are the reactions that I remember seeing.
He goes, "Yeah." He says, and when she goes, "That's their most dangerous plan," and she's like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah." He goes, "That means they can kill." But I was like, he already explained that earlier that they could already kill. Anyways,
Yeah.
so they just go up there, And she's like, "Who are you?" And I was like, another comment I wrote down. He's like, he's really sassy for this being up to this person who's not supposed to apparently exist. Now all of a sudden it does exist, and it's the most dangerous black magic, and it can kill you, and you would be murdered, and nobody knew that she murdered you. So yeah, so she's like, who is this? She goes, this is she's a foreigner from far, far away. He's like, where? The USA. Where's that at? Far, far away. He goes, what do you want to know? And it's, yeah, just like matter of factly, she's like, I want to learn the dark arts.
Okay.
And I will say she looked creepy. She did look creepy with her
Ooh, the witch?
nails. The witch, she looked creepy
Oh.
with her nails like that. I was like, yeesh. And then they just start going into like, oh, you want to be my okay? And then yeah, just I don't know. She's like, all right, you can be my apprentice. And yeah, she's always questioning. She sounded like a Skeksis to me. Like when she finally started talking, she sounded like a Skeksis from the
Yeah,
Dark
kind
stuff
of does.
and Yoda. And I'm interested in learning the most powerful black magic that exists today. That's what she says, the girl. And just like that, she's like, okay. She goes, but here are my terms. And then right away he cuts in. He's like, well, wait a minute. How do we know it's going to be you tomorrow? And she's like, you won't. I change all the time. And da, 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 da. So that never
Yeah.
gets answered. And she's like, okay, she goes, and then all of a sudden, even though she doesn't know where the USA is, she knows the customs of the West. She's like, I heard in the West the custom is to shake hands. And you're like, that's correct. And she's like, all right, be here tomorrow. He goes, I must go now. So I'm going to say goodbye. She goes, shake my hand. So she gets up close to her to shake her hand. And then she's like, okay, bye. She disappears. And all of a sudden her hand is left in the girl's hand.
Right.
And this is another thing throughout the whole thing. No emotion whatsoever. No emotion whatsoever when these things that the girl barely had an emotion. She just dropped the hand. I will say, so in your version, when those special effects go in, did it look like it was like a super duper like 900 like been recorded 900 times VHS? Did it look like that?
Yeah, it got really grainy and dark.
Right. But I will
Every
say,
every, every like special effects scene was like that.
but I will say it didn't look bad. You know what I mean? Even though it was grainy, I mean, it may have looked grainy, but it didn't really look bad. It didn't look fake. It looked like the hand crawled away. So I was like, that looks pretty
Yeah.
cool. I was like, that looks pretty cool. And the witch looked pretty cool. I mean, she was kind of a little melted. So I was like, all right. So this is where it comes in. Like you said, why are they wearing this? Why are they wearing the same thing? Well, guess what? It's another scene. It's the next night scene. But if you didn't
Right.
know that, if you weren't really paying attention, like, why are they wearing different clothes now? So it's the second night. They come back, um, and she's like, "Who is it?" And now you just hear her voice, and she's like, "Did you bring the stuff I told you? Did you bring the stuff that we agreed upon?" And they're like,
Right.
"Yes," which they never talked about in the previous scene. So for some reason, I guess she asked for jewels and for blood.
Yeah.
And then it's just a long. It's like, all right, give it to me. Um, it's just a long ass tongue that comes
The
out, and it
bushes.
yeah, out of the bushes, and it takes the jewels out of her hand, and all of a sudden they're stuck in the thing, and they're like, "Where's my blood?" And she just starts chugging that blood, and for some reason the blood is different colors. I guess they have different flavored blood in Bali because one was like dark red and one was like pink. And then she's like, "All right, now it's time for the first lesson. Take your skirt off." He's like,
Right.
"Whoa, whoa, whoa!" Oh God. So she takes her skirt off. Oh my God. And somebody, I saw somebody comment on there, like the little thing that it drew on there. And it's like a little lightning. That's somebody comment on there that what she drew on there. It looked like the Kool-Aid kid, like from the Kool-Aid, like, oh no, it looked like the Hawaiian Punch kid.
Wow. Okay.
So she's great. So she puts that on her thigh. And she's like, why do you have to do that? Why did she have to take her pants? This is where, like I say, he starts getting sassy. I'm like, dude, you're getting real sassy for somebody who can kill you. He's like, why do you have to take off her pants? And she's like, why did you come here? So she does that, and then she hands her some kind of thing she has to wear that's got like magic writing on it. And she's like, you need to wear that under a topi. And he has to explain, a topi is something that's worn under local garments around here. So she's like, all right. So they're like, come back tomorrow. So so they leave, and she's like, "Come back tomorrow, but come back alone." He's like, "Why can't I want to protect her?" She's like, "Come back alone." He goes, "That's when she says, she goes, you're too curious. That makes me know that you're unreliable and dangerous." Oh my God! So they leave, and what's after that? What happens after that?
And she comes back by herself.
No, something else happens before that.
Is that where she
Oh,
goes to the place?
so the next scene, he shows up. It's the day, and he shows up with a present. She's like, "Oh, you didn't have to." They never show you what the present is. They never show you what the present is, and
Mark, you don't have to know everything.
and he's like, "You see, I told you I'd take care of you."
Never
And
showed her Toppy.
I told you I'd take care of you. I'm just keeping my promise. So they're flirting and all. And what's funny too, I thought was funny was the little guy shows up. This is the first time they get interrupted. The little guy comes up with he goes, "Here's your drink, sir." And
Right.
then he immediately turns around and walks away. And as he's walking away, he's like, "Do you need anything else?" But he's already walking away.
And they leave the drinks there.
Yeah, they leave the drinks there, and then they go inside, and
And he's
she's
wearing a
like,
different shirt.
he's wearing a different shirt, and she's like, I bet that he's like, "I bet if you decipher this, you can come with me." He goes, "How do we figure out that I could go with you? I don't want you to go by yourself." She's like, "I bet you if you can read this, if you could figure it out, you could probably go with me. That'll be your way to go with me." So she takes off her sarong, and she's in her bikini, and he just gets mesmerized by her skin. And I swear, yeah, it does look like, I was like, this is not even writing. It looks like the Kool-Aid. It looks like the
Yeah.
Hawaiian Punch Kid. And he's like,
He can
"Oh,
read it.
yeah." He's like, "Oh, wait a minute." He goes, "Yeah." And all he does is read. He goes, "It says Leyak." And she's like, "That's a good start." He's like, "Yeah, yeah." So she's like, "Oh, just forget it. Just forget it." Jesus Christ. So she goes back again in the next scene. Um, so this is where you say it can get confusing because it's a scene. In one shot, she's wearing like a skirt. Next shot, it's a woman wearing jeans. Next shot, it's the woman in the skirt. Next time, it's the jeans. Well, then you finally realize it's the unknown follower following her into the woods
Well, they
with the
never
witch
showed
again.
her.
Yeah, they
Toppy.
did. They did.
Never
So
saw
she
her.
goes,
Well,
yeah.
actually.
So she sees the witch again, and this time the witch is carrying those two poles. It looks like it's got little wooden tents on the top of it. So that must be some kind of tradition. I wonder what I was trying to look that up, but I couldn't figure out what it was. So she's wearing those two poles, and then she starts laughing again, of course, because that's her trademark. And they're both. Did you notice they're both wearing the same things? Like the witch is wearing
Yeah.
exactly what she's wearing, and I guess she looks. The whole thing, the beginning, she's like, "I can change at any time. Like I'm gonna be different. You'll never know. I'll never look the same." Well, she just looks like the witch again, just a little bit more younger and not crazier. But she did look like the witch, and she was dressed like Kathy. And then she just starts
She was
laughing,
she was standing more upright
right? And she wasn't
than
acting like
from the
she wasn't acting
previous.
like a
Yeah.
she wasn't walking like a zombie. And then and then she starts doing like a little crazy dance around her. So she starts doing it, and then what happens after that? Oh, that's the first time. Is it the first time her head comes off?
No.
No. So then it goes back to the day, and that's when they're walking. She's like, "Guess what I did last night?" He's like, "What?"
Witchcraft.
It was frightening. She's like, then she explains to him that she's like, she's soon gonna be the master of. I'm almost the master of the Leyak, and he's like, "What?"
One night.
Yeah, she said everything as they. She says everything was as they arranged it to be. Flashback. Then all of a sudden they turn into pigs,
Yeah.
which I have to say too didn't look that bad. They did it slow. It didn't look cheesy. Was it perfect? Was it? I have to say, throughout this whole movie, as shitty as a movie it was, the special effects weren't that bad. She turned into a pig, and then there were pigs, and like they looks like they took their time. It looked a little melty. It wasn't bad to me. It wasn't bad. I was like, it could have been worse. It could have looked horrible. You know, it could have just been like they just taped shit on them. You know, sometimes you
Yeah.
see like they barely put the costume on and they don't like blend it in.
Yeah.
So yes, the flashback they turn into pigs. Next scene, middle of the scene, all of a sudden he's with his uncle who we've never met before, and he's like, "Is it true that there's a spell to fight against the Leyak?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, of course, of course." He's all real matter of fact about everything.
Yeah.
He's like, "Yeah, it's of course." He goes, "Yeah, my uncle used that spell before, and yeah, he goes, and it worked." He goes, "Oh yeah, of course it worked. Otherwise, we wouldn't be talking here today." He goes, "But you have to learn the mantras," and he starts doing one of the mantras. I'm like, "Is this gonna?" I was like, "It starts going on forever." It's like, is this what this whole scene's gonna be? It's just
Right.
him saying the mantra." Um, so yeah, like this is the beginning of like him saying, at the beginning, him saying like, I don't know what's going. I don't. Oh, I just heard about the Leyak. All of a sudden, now he knows about the spells of the Leyak. He knows an uncle who's fought a Leyak before. Um, and then it cuts to the uncle's by himself, and then he's walking up to him,
Right.
and then he starts. He's like, yeah, he goes, you're old enough to learn the mantras. I was like, that's all it takes is just praying. Um, and then he gives him that sword, or yeah, he goes, the mantras will give you some power. He goes, remember that sword I was there? He goes, oh yeah. He goes, oh here it is. He goes, this will give you some more power. This will even increase your power. He's like, okay. I was like, is that how you carry around that knife? Like, you have it all
Yeah.
wrapped up. You're gonna get stabbed by somebody else before you unwrap it. Um, so again, they go to the next scene. He's talking to her, and they're in the middle of another fucking scene where they're just talking. She tells him that they can communicate with their minds, her and the witch, and he's like, oh, so he goes, you can even think like other life forms? He's like all impressed. Um, and he's like, when you were talking about that fire being destroyed, he goes, that's another being dying. He goes, so she's like, so you mean I killed
A
somebody?
murderer?
I'm a murderer? He's like, don't worry. He goes, it wasn't your doing.
It's cool, man. It's
It's
cool.
cool. He goes, you didn't mean to do it. So they're talking about something like, what the fuck? What do you mean fire? Like, I don't like the fire, nothing. Nah, don't worry about it. Balls of flames, not shown at all. Like, I don't know what they were talking about. And then all of a sudden she gets sick. She's like, oh my God, I don't feel good. So he goes and lays her down. He's like, let me call the doctor. He goes, let me call the doctor. She's like, no, no, I don't want to call the doctor. The witch is gonna fix it. And she's like, she goes, I'm gonna go tonight. She goes, I can't go right now because it's the daylight. He goes, so I'm gonna go tonight. She said she would cure me tonight. And I'm like, what are you talking about? But then I don't know. I guess you could say too, like they're talking mentally. Maybe they're talking mentally at the same time. Like when she says she's sick, maybe the witch hurt her. I don't know. She's like, oh, she said she'd fix me tonight. Um, and so I'm gonna go, and that way she can complete the training. So then he says, well, I got to go into town. He goes, everything will be fine tomorrow. And she's like, I'll be back tomorrow. And what does he say? He's like, the only good Kathy is the real Kathy, or some bullshit like it says. And
That's
there's
an old.
and I was thinking like, there's no other scenes that shows her acting any other different than she's acting now. So what do you mean the old Kathy?
Oh, yeah.
Let's see here. So again, the queen's there again. She doesn't really change that much. I guess she looks a little bit younger. Maybe just clearer skin. um, so this is the first appearance of the headless. So I guess in different parts of Southeast Asia, like the Leyak is this thing. So here in Bali,
Penanggalan.
yeah. So in Bali, the Penanggali is the Leyak,
Yeah.
and the Penanggalan. I don't know if I get what other part of that area they call her that. I want to say India maybe. So yeah, so they start dancing, and then all of a sudden, it's like she puts her hands like crossover, and all of a sudden her head pops out. And that didn't look bad, like the guts. I mean, it didn't look bad. It didn't look bad. And then the
Yeah.
first thing, she goes out into the night. Um, let's see here. You have to. Oh yeah, she goes into the night. Wait a minute. So first man never discussed this before. She doesn't really change that much. First man, have you? Oh, she's like, you haven't paid me for your lessons. She's, well, how much do you want? She's like, I
No,
just need
that's
a.
when she goes to her house.
No, 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 no. That's she talk. They talk about that again. But in this scene,
Oh,
she's like, you haven't. She's like, now I have taught you, but you haven't paid for your lessons. She's like, I just need to borrow your head to achieve all that power. Um, yeah, because the head's already out. She goes, and yeah, her head comes off, and she's like, just gonna borrow your head. So her head comes off, and then just in the middle of the night, it cuts to another scene in the middle of the night, and they've got those two guys hanging out on the porch, and then it cuts to the lady. She's pregnant. I guess she's already in labor with the older lady, and the guys are like, she didn't go through this much trouble the last time. And then the old lady's like, those like, oh, don't worry, it'll soon be over. In comes
yeah.
the vampire head. And like I said, that didn't look bad. I didn't see any strings. It looked like just a fake head flying through the air. Um, and
Mark, that
it
didn't look
comes.
good.
It didn't look bad. You didn't see strings. It
It
wasn't
didn't
obvious.
look good.
It wasn't like those 50s it didn't look like those 50s spaceships where you see the flying saucer and you can see the fucking string turning it didn't you couldn't see any strings. So it comes to the window. She immediately fucking throws the old lady out the window in front of those guys like hardcore like out the window. I don't know how she did that since she has no arms and legs, but yeah, so then she immediately starts going down on the pregnant lady, which what she was really doing is she's sucking the
Yeah.
baby out. She was sucking the baby out. But yes, if you walked into that scene out of nowhere, it would look like the girl was going down on her, the vampire girl was going down on her. I kind of in my mind I wanted to see that her bump went down, but I don't think her bump went down when she was eating it. Did you notice that?
Yeah. It
It did
deflates.
go down. It did. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I was like this. I was like, was that in my head? Um, the guys come in, no reaction whatsoever. No scared reaction. Oh my God, some headless monster is sucking my wife's coochie. No, 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 no reaction whatsoever. Like they're just frozen. And then it takes off. What funny part is when it takes off, the little rubber, you can see the little rubber, the little rubber
Intros.
intros hit the window on the
Yeah.
way out.
So I'll tell you this. I was reading about that, the pen and gal. So the pen and gal, the woman must meditate during a ritual bath in vinegar, with her whole body submerged except for her head. They're only active at night. The creature soaks its organs in vinegar to shrink them for easy entry back into the body. So
So,
that
so,
thing smells of vinegar whenever she flies.
uh,
Um, they you can tell who's a Penningal, like even if they're in their normal form, because they smell like
smell like
vinegar.
vinegar.
And then um, also whoever she only feeds on pregnant women and young children. Whoever she fed upon, they contract a disease that's pretty much fatal. And then if she is not successful, anyone who is brushed by her entrails will suffer painful open sores.
I mean,
there's
it's a
there's
good
a lot of
monster.
backstory they didn't go into about this thing, but
It's a good like I said, it was made for people who knew exactly like you could tell like
yeah,
this part of the world like they believe in this hardcore like oh that's a fucking Leyak. What are you talking about?
like
Um,
if they truly translated the dialogue, maybe when those dudes ran in, they would have it translated as again instead of like no response.
so yeah, so after she goes out the window after she sucks the baby out, she goes right back to the queen. Her head goes back in, and the queen tells her, "I've succeeded in moving your head." She's like, "You're cured now. If you want to continue being, if you want to continue, I will make you my disciple." What does the Kathy say? That's okay. I'm cool.
Okay, good.
That's okay. I'm good. Thanks for helping me. Thanks. This is gonna really be good for my book. And then she's like, "You think it's that easy to walk away from me? You're gonna do it. She said, I'll never let you walk away.
And then she walks away, which she basically just does, lets her walk away. um, so then it goes back to night again. She's visibly younger, the queen. I think.
The blood is what's making her younger.
Oh, so it goes back to the night again, and they're back together, and for no reason whatsoever, they turn into snakes.
Right.
And the next scene is probably one of the best scenes because this is after they turn into snakes. So next scene, and that the snake one, I was like, what are they trying to do? At first, I didn't realize because it looked like I don't know. The nose is real bulbous, like when she was like they were like turning her face into a snake, and they're like, oh, and then what did somebody commented? It looked like it would before they actually went into the scene where it was actual snakes when they were just laying there skinny, both of them next to each other. Somebody said they looked like a couple of baked. they looked like a couple of burnt rolls from the Olive Garden. So they turn into snakes, and then there's because is this the scene when she was walking and she gets scared because she walks into a spot and it was a skull and there was white mice in there. I guess the mice there in Bali are white. Was that this? I think it might have been the same scene. So you see that, you foreshadow that, and then next thing you know, there's snakes, and then next thing you know, she's in her bed, and this is creep scene part 2 for Bahandra. She's lying there asleep, and he just kisses her while she's in her sleep, and she's like, "What the fuck?" And then she immediately gets sick and goes to the bathroom, and she starts immediately throwing up white mice in with her live white mice in with her throw up,
I know.
and no reaction whatsoever. No, like, holy shit, babe, you're fucking throwing up live rats. What's wrong? He's just like, what's wrong? She's like, I don't know.
She throws up the rats and he sees them.
Yeah.
And then he says, "You must have eaten something bad."
Yeah, and then she starts
like,
telling
what?
the story. She starts telling the story that I had this dream and I was with the queen and there was a table of all these delicacies and I just was eating all the delicacies. He's like, you see, it must have been something you ate last night. I was like, they're fucking live rats. No reaction whatsoever. He's like, yeah, maybe it's something you eat last night. Straight to next scene, straight into fucking balls of fire flying into the middle of the night. And I'm
If
like,
you say that scene, if you tell me that scene didn't look bad, Mark,
it didn't look bad. It looked like
I
balls
would,
of fire. I mean,
I would just
I
give
knew they
that
were
the
balls of
soup.
fire. I knew they were balls of fire, but it looked cool. I didn't see any strings. They were coming at each other.
I saw tons of strings.
I didn't
That
see any
must have been
string.
my,
Not
that
one
must have been
string.
my print.
Maybe it was your print because mine was pretty dark, but I didn't see no scenes. It looked pretty cool. I was thinking, how did they not catch that whole jungle on fire with these fireballs? I guess because it was on top of water. Yeah. Next thing you know, one of them blows up and it turns into her. Next thing you know, another one blows up and it turns into another woman. And then she's like, ah, and then the drums and it's the queen. I've defeated my enemies. I'm like, we've never seen this person before. Like, how do we know she's your enemy? And
I
of
thought that
course,
was a girl that's been following them.
no, it wasn't.
Okay, I was just like, well, I guess
No,
that's the
because
girl that's been following them.
as you remember, if you remember the very last scene of the whole movie, the fight scene.
Right.
Okay, we're not gonna talk about that yet. So no, it is not that girl that's following him. So and of course, in my mind, I'm like, holy fuck, this is what they were talking about 5 scenes ago about the balls on fire.
Yeah.
Okay, next scene. Uh, so the next thing he's showing her into a house. I don't know why she's moving, but she's like, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna be here. I'll be able to relax. I'll be able to write my book." Why is she moving? Who knows? She says it's quiet and she can finish her book. Um, he gives some dumb joke. Um, they're about to kiss. They go inside and they're sitting on the couch and they're about to kiss, and some guy goes, "Oh, hello, sir. I'm here with my boss told me to give you." I wrote down some guy shows up with a receipt delivery.
Yeah.
For a receipt for what? Who knows? And then, of course, boom. Next scene, he's wearing another shirt. They're in a completely different scene. um, she's like, oh, I'm gonna be really lonely when you go. She's like, I didn't know you had to say. I remember I wrote this out. Like, did she just say sail? She's like, yeah. I didn't know you had to sail so soon. So I'm thinking, yeah. I guess he's gonna be on a boat, right? She goes, I'm gonna be, he's like, it's just for a few days. She goes, I'll be so depressed. I'll miss you. And the one, I don't know if it's the same thing in Europe. Her one comment, she's like, wow, you really work hard for your money, don't you? I'm like, what? So yeah, they're like, oh, it'll be fine. Looked like, yeah. So this is another one. He looks like he's gonna go in for the kiss, and he just puts his cheek on her lips. So next scene, it's like a bunch of villagers. I'm like, what's going on? Well, it turns out it's a fucking funeral.
Yeah.
Right. And I was like, is it for the pregnant lady? Who knows? And then there was a girl watching him. At first, I thought that was the queen, but it's not. The girl watching is the girl that's been following him.
Okay.
Next scene. She's lying down, staring at the ceiling. Let's see. She's like that. She's lying down, staring at the ceiling.
Does she go to the closet?
She starts. I'm trying to read my own fucking writing here.
Doesn't she go to the closet and then the witch is
So
behind
she
her?
starts writing, and then she turns around. She starts writing down. And then her head comes off.
Because that's when she asked her. That's when she asked her about payment again.
No, this is before that for some reason, and it just flies out the fucking window, and that girl's watching it. The girl's following her, and
I have, she's in her room, and she turns around, and the witch is like, "Why are you so surprised to see me?" And she's like, "You're learning black magic from me or whatever. I shouldn't scare you." And then she tells her she still hasn't paid her, and she's like, "I'll pay you whatever you want." And she tells her she needs to use her head one more time.
Oh yeah, you're right. You're right. That's what I wrote down. She's lying in the ceiling. Then she goes into the drawer, and then she starts hearing the laughing. And you're right. She's like, "You haven't paid me yet." And she was like, "No, I told you." She's like, "What do you want? I'll give it to you." She's like, "No, you're gonna say, yeah, you're right. You're gonna help me get. I need one more." Blah blah blah. She starts giving those stories, and that's when her head flies off. And then that girl that's been following him sees the head flow out,
but her body just stays there up against the wall with no head.
Yeah, yeah. And then all of a sudden she's back in bed.
Right.
And then her lips are all bleeding. And she's like, "Oh, I guess she had blood all over her lips." She's like, "Oh, that's weird." She's, "Well, I guess I just bit myself." Next scene, it's an unknown woman talking to the uncle. No dialogue, can't hear what they're saying.
Right.
Oh my god! And then this next scene is I was like, "Oh my god!" The uncle's in a circle with all those dudes. Don't know who these dudes are. Don't know who they are. Don't know if they're any kind of. Who knows what they're saying. So then he goes. The uncle's like, he's like talking to this other man. Who knows? So the one I wrote it down. First man, he's like, the reports we're getting is that it was a flying head. Funny thing is, was that the hair was light. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Their hair was dark. Anyways, then the second man says, what does he say? The Leyak only. They only seek. Oh, they seek out the unborn for their blood.
Right.
He goes, or at least that's what the relatives of the dead told me. He was like, we need to stop this right away. And the uncle's like, after like a long pause, he's like, yeah. He goes, the world has begun to turn into an evil place these days. He goes, man, and after all that peace, I was like, what the fuck is he talking about? He goes, the black magic, it's a poison that we have to exercise. Oh, then it's another man. He goes, the black magic is the poison that we have to exercise out of this, and we need help from the Almighty. Then the uncle again, the great Almighty, give us. He goes, he says the great Aliwasha gave us the gift to protect our families from evil, and we must make use of that gift. And then and the fourth man is like, I agree with you. Because these are forces of evil. We need to stamp it out. When is it? Oh, and that's when he starts saying too. He goes, then this one, another fucking, to me, like made me furious because he was calling her master, and all of a sudden in this last scene, he's like, yeah, the Leyak magician, she needs 3 bodies to become fully powerful. She's down to 2. He goes, so we must stop her. Next thing in the scene, she's in bed again.
No, she's not.
Yeah.
Her
Yes, she
body
is.
was. Isn't
She's
that when her
back in.
body was left?
See, this is what. No, you see, I think the first time she saw the lady, she didn't say, but now this is another scene. She was laying in bed, and the teeth were very. Then a very young. This is when the witch was started. She looked very young, and she was like, I haven't got paid. She's like,
Oh, okay.
She's like, what do you? She's like, what do you want? She's like, I want fresh blood, and that's when she's like, what? She's like, you want me to go right now? she's like, yes, I can't wait. I need fresh blood. She's like, all right, I'll go tomorrow. She's like, no, you need to go right now. She's like, but it's so late. So then, of course, her head comes off again, and then she goes out, and then this is when the uncle's creeping up, and the uncle sees her take off. And then it cuts to the scene of an airport, right? And I was like, what's going on with the airport now? And then it shows that guy coming back. I was like, didn't he fucking go on a boat? Anyways,
Yeah.
so he's getting the cab driving back home, and then just randomly, her head's floating by, like she just happened to be floating by while he's coming. Yeah, in the woods while he's coming home in the cab, and I couldn't really tell if he saw her or not. Again, because nobody in this movie has a reaction to anything. So she's just hey, floating on by while he's coming home. So then after that, it goes to her flying into this little village, and she comes up to the door, and I couldn't see it because it was in Balinese. I don't know what it says, but obviously from her face, she knows it's a trap. She comes out, all the villagers start coming at her, and then she just takes off again. And then he goes to the uncle, where all this talk about mantras and all this talk about spells. What does he do? He sticks toothpicks in her neck. He goes back to her. I'm sorry. He's back at the house where it's just her body.
That's part of the way
folklore?
to defeat it. Yeah,
It's toothpicks.
You're supposed to put sharp objects in her neck to destroy her organs when she goes back into her body.
That would have been nice to know the first 45 minutes of this movie.
Either that or just burn her body.
So yeah, so after all that talk, he puts toothpicks in her neck. Then he runs out because she comes back. And then Mahidra shows up, and
Mahidra.
he comes back, and he's like, oh man, he goes, I think I know what's going on here. The uncle's like, what do you mean you think you know what's going on here? You just saw a fucking headless body, It's like, and then the funny part was like she shows back up and she sees the sticks in her neck, and she takes one out with her mouth, but apparently she can take the other ones out. He's like, yeah. He goes, I know what's going on. He goes, I just didn't ever think it would get to this. Like, what? You're the one who started all this shit. You're the one who brought that leak.
Black magic.
He's like, I just didn't think it would get out. I just didn't think it would, evolve into this. He's like, and then again, the uncle's like, don't worry. He goes, maybe it's for the best. By a supernatural force he goes, maybe it's best that it was that she got involved with a supernatural force. I'm like, as opposed to what? He made it seem like, he goes, maybe it's the best that this was due to a supernatural force. Like what? She was wanting to turn into a Panangali on her own fruition. Like she did it to herself, but it's okay because the Queen Mother turned her into one. At least she didn't turn her into one herself. Jesus Christ. He's like, we can't just put her back the way she was. And he starts, yeah, and this just starts begging her. He's like, no, I have to save her. He's like, we can't just put her back the way she was. Um,
So that's the
he's
other thing. Once they turn into the Penn and Gallon thing,
they can't come back.
um, their body's dead.
Oh, okay.
Like they can't come back.
And he's like, she's become Satan's prisoner, Mahidra. And that's when that's when she starts trying to take one out, and then she takes that one stick out with her mouth, and then she takes off. So next thing you know, it's the day they're in the woods, and I guess they've buried her body, and it's some kind of weird little trap thing.
Yeah, you have to bury their body, and you have to stand guard for like 3 days or something.
He's like, yes,
or else it can come back.
He's like, you think you can help me? We need to sit down here and we need to pray for 3 days so the body won't,
Right.
because we can't let it go back to its body, or it'll become even more powerful. He goes, I just feel bad. Because I just feel like it's my fault. And this is his whole speech. The uncle's like, hey, he goes, that's what happens. He goes, we learn from our mistakes. He goes, you're still young. It's time to move on. He's like, you just let your girlfriend turn into a Bengali. He's like, that's how we live life. We make mistakes.
Another Bengali's down the road.
Yeah, there'll be some other Bengalis down the road. He goes, his comment was, at least you got to know her. So the next
old black magic.
So the next scene is he's dreaming. This is the only scene that he shows any fucking reaction to anything. So he's dreaming, and then all of a sudden she shows up all together, and she's like, "Oh, you need to help me. You need to help me. I need to get my body back out of that grave." And he's like, "Oh, okay." And then next thing you know, she's all green and trying to kill him. And that's the only time in the whole movie he shows any kind of reaction. He's like, "Ah!" He's all screaming. Only time. Then he goes. Next scene, he's back at night at the graveyard with his uncle. He's like, so what do you think that dream meant, Uncle? He's like, you just said it the whole scene. She's trying to get you to get her body back. Oh, so this is the pen. This is the last scene. And it's the longest scene. So, he's like, okay. So they're just like, okay, yeah, no, man. She's just trying to get you back. We can't get the body. You can't get the body. She can't have the body back. It's gonna be bad.
Yeah.
Let's pray. I'm gonna meditate. And they just got those two guys, those two little goons with them. And they're like, oh, how tired? Can we take it? He goes, yeah, I'll take a nap first. And the one guy lays down on the other guy. And then, let's see here. And then all of a sudden, for no good reason, never knew this. The uncle had this. He just starts levitating. I guess he's meditating. He just starts levitating for no good reason. I'm like, what? I'm like, what is he?
Do not say that didn't look bad.
It could have looked worse.
Really?
It looked like a ripoff of Tron. And then, sure enough, the head shows up, and the queen shows up. Those two guys take off like a slapstick comedy, rolling down the hill because they get scared. And then the queen is like, it's you. Like, she recognizes the uncle, and then she's like, you defeated me before, but you're not going to defeat me again. So here comes the battle. So the uncle, just fucking, after all that talk, the uncle, he starts doing his mantras, and he starts levitating, which doesn't do anything to the witch. And then she hits him like one time, slits his throat. He's dead. He's dead within like 1 minute.
Well, he doesn't. They're shooting like lasers and stuff.
Oh, that's right. See, I'm thinking of the other uncle that comes up after this, Drew. So yeah, they start doing a little bit of lasers, and then once one of those lasers gets off, she hits him. He falls back, and she slices his throat, dead. Okay, he's like, after 2 minutes, he's dead. So she's fighting this. She's going to go after Hydra. Oh, he's trying to fight the head. And the head's kicking his ass, and then all of a sudden, just randomly, second uncle comes in, wearing all white. And she's like, oh, it's you again. I'm like, you.
They have a history, Mark. They never went into it.
I'm like, all right. So this uncle's a little bit more badass. He starts shooting stuff out of his eye. They're shooting. They're like, it's like that old kung fu trope. Have you ever seen that? I forgot the name of that kung fu movie where it's all like lightning bolts. I forget what it's called, but it's like that kind of. It's like
Big Trouble in Little China.
No. It's older. It's like old kung fu movie. It's like a Shaw Brothers movie. I forget what it's called.
Oh, I
They
don't know.
were showing it on on Robert Rodriguez's channel a while back. But it's that kind of, it's like drawn on, like it's drawn on the film,
Yeah.
right? And he just makes a weird sound where she starts shooting stuff at him, he starts shooting stuff at her. Um, and then all of a sudden she just walks away. He just lets her walk away, and she's like all hobbling, like to a hole for some reason. And then the next thing you know, he's on top of a mountain, and he's watching her, and he starts shooting stuff at her. And then apparently, this is what I got. She apparently turns herself into a long white sheet, and she wraps the uncle up. And this whole time he had a knife. He told me he had a knife. So she wraps him up. He gets his knife. He slices it into pieces. Well, then all those pieces turn back into the pig lady.
Pig.
And the
Yeah.
and the pig lady gets back to all the pieces of the pig lady turn back, and they become pig lady again. And for some odd reason, because this wasn't in the first time they turned into a pig, this pig lady had large, I guess for lack of a better word,
Breasticles.
teats. Large,
Breasticles. Yeah.
very large women ham pieces. Um, Jesus Christ. So they start fighting. I don't even remember how she turns back into. Oh, then okay. So they start fighting. He stabs her in the teat, one of the teats, and then she turns back into the queen, and then everything blows up. Right, and then it goes back to Hedra fighting the headless Kathy.
Right.
She's still connected to that. Everything blows up, and I'm like, how is this guy gonna beat her? Well, he doesn't beat
The
her.
sun.
It's the sun, because she's a vampire apparently, or the leak is the vampire. The sun comes out, she burns up. She burns
That's
up, which looks pretty good. I mean, it wasn't horrible looking. I mean, it looked. You know what it looked like? It looked like you know how the animation on Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, where it was kind of fuzzy. It was like animated fuzzy. That's what it looked like. It looked like that kind of fire.
all
It
right.
looked like felt fire.
Yeah.
And then as soon as she dies, um, all of a sudden, oh, because she did get her head back, right? The body came out. At some point in this
Right.
fight, the body came out, and then so when that lady dies, the girl dies, and then Hedra walks up to her with the uncle, and that's the end of the movie.
Yep.
It cuts to the end credits. Oh, this movie hurt my brain so bad, so bad.
Oh, no.
I would recommend this movie to absolutely no one.
It was made primarily for Indonesian audiences. That's why, which it's all Indonesian folklore, which is why they didn't waste time on exposition.
I think I would like to be high, like really high, and watch it. I think it would make it way better.
So really, the only people that would know about it were like people in Indonesia's 4 major cities.
Yeah, and this is not the first movie this guy made. Because apparently, like I did read an article where this is one of the first movies he made because they wanted to westernize they wanted to make kind of like Western style movies for Indonesia, but that didn't really mean like movies, as you can see, movies with a plot and a story. It meant like the gore part because there was blood. There was a lot of blood in this one, wasn't there? No, I'm thinking of something else. I mean, it was kind of blood. I mean, it was like like gory horror. To them, Western is like horror, gory. Like you see the arm fall off, that kind of stuff. But then he started doing movies. This movie is like, to me, this movie is like, you heard about those malls they have in China where the entire mall is just a bunch of stores of rip-off stuff. Like, it's not really Nike, it's not really Gucci, it's not really Fendi. It's all fake
Flea
stuff.
markets.
No, malls. No, like
I
serious.
know, but
They have malls where everything in there is rip-offs of real brands. That's what this movie is to me. It's like a rip, like, oh, we're just gonna make some money. We're gonna make our people think that it's a Western, like a Western style horror movie. But with that, like one of the next movies he made after this one in 1989 was called Lady Terminator, and trying to make some money off of the Terminator because that's when the first Terminator came out, and he keeps changing his name. Like in this one, he's Tajil, whatever, Jalil For Lady Terminator, he turned his name into Jaleel Jackson. Then there's another one called Dangerous Seductress, and then all of a sudden his name is John Miller. That Lady Terminator one, do you remember that one at all?
It's been a long time. You got to remind me of what it is.
I guess this is their thing there. Like everything has to do with like folklore and stuff. Like it starts off with this witch of the sea, like queen of the sea.
Yeah.
And she like has all these guys. She like finds guys to have sex with, but then out of her lady parts is a snake, and that snake kills the guys that she sleeps with. Well, she finds this one guy who, for some reason, turns out to be a Caucasian guy in this movie. Well, right before the snake comes out and kills him, he grabs the snake, and when he grabs the snake out of her pussy, it turns into a knife, which is like a mystical knife, and this pisses her off because this is how she defeats him.
A mystical knife.
Yeah, so it turns into a knife, and she gets all pissed off. She's like, I'm going back to the sea, and I'm gonna curse your great granddaughter. I was like, that's very specific. And then the next thing you know, it's modern day in the coast there in Indonesia, and this young Caucasian girl is coming in. She's an archaeologist, and she's looking for she's looking for the lost city of the serpent princess lady. And she goes into the library. She's like, I'm looking for this book. It reminded me of Garth Marenghi. I was thinking, I was like, I wonder if the guy who did Garth Marenghi
Well, don't tell me
got.
all of it. I'm gonna go back and watch it.
Well, this is just the beginning. This is
I'm gonna go back
just the
and watch it.
beginning. And then because that's how she talks. I'm an American architect, and I don't believe in any of that hocus pocus. Because she asked for a book, and like the old Chinese guy's like, you need to be careful. This is the curse of the serpent lady. Well, I'm an architect, and I don't believe in any of that mumbo jumbo. Just give me the book. And anyway, she goes and she gets some old guy to take her on a boat out into the place. They're like, we're not gonna go in there. It's cursed. She's like, oh, come on, Mr. Boss, take me in there, because she's wearing a bikini, of course. So she takes him. All of a sudden, a big old wave knocks the boat over because she's scuba diving. She's gonna scuba dive to the bottom because she's looking for this knife. She goes down there. All of a sudden, she's in this palace under the water, and she basically turns into seductress. So she comes out of the water all naked, like the Terminator, and everybody she sees just starts killing everybody, like the Terminator.
Go back and watch it.
Oh my god, it's horrible. It's horrible. But if you enjoyed this movie, check out Lady Terminator. Check out what was the other one? Because there's this guy on YouTube that reviews this stuff. And he showed it. There was another one. It's called Brandon's Cult Movie Reviews. He did not pay me to do that. What is the other movie? It's in this from the same place here. Oh, The Devil's Sword. That's another crazy movie.
Mahendra's in that one.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So that girl from Mystics in Bali, the main girl,
Mm-hmm.
she was a German tourist in Indonesia.
Yeah, and they just got her to be in the movie. She wasn't even an actress, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I gave it 2 stars on Letterboxd.
Nah, it's trash. I mean, it's not. You can't compare this to good movies. It's just trash. But I dug it. I thought it was trashy.
I don't know, man. I mean, I'm glad I watched it. I watched it 2 times for you, Andrew, because I couldn't believe the first time what I was watching.
I saw the FP 2 times.
Now that is a movie. At least that movie tried to have a plot.
That one's not on Mondo Macabro, Mark.
That Mondo Macabre, it's not out anymore. It's no more.
No, they still have
came
it.
back.
Yeah, there was a reprinting of it with this red case.
No, but I mean, I thought you said it went out of business.
No, they were when they first came out in 2003. That one's out of print.
Ah.
And then they put this one out in 2007, I guess.
Oh my gosh, I don't know, man. I feel like This movie took something out of me, man. Took a little piece of
Yes.
me. It took a little piece of me.
Then we're
There's a,
even.
there's a lot of people. Yeah, there's a lot of people from this movie and the Devil's Sword. Have you seen that one?
No.
That's another one that's exactly like this movie. You're like, what the fuck is going on in this
Oh,
movie?
so apparently Mystics in Bali didn't come out in the U.S. until '89.
Okay, but it was made, but it did come out in Indonesia in '81.
Yeah.
Oh shit, he's on Mondo Macabro had a TV series documentary, fantasy films from Indonesia, and the director was in that documentary. Now I need to find that documentary. A short history of Indonesian fantasy and action movies of the 70s and 80s with a particular focus on the output of Rapi Film Studio, makers of such cinematic classics as Lady Terminator and Mystics of Bali. Huh, when did this come out?
Nice.
Maybe you can only get this
I know they were
episode
playing.
air in 2002.
I know some people were telling me they saw Mystics in Bali in the Draft House on Weird Wednesdays in Austin.
I would not pay to see this movie.
I think Weird Wednesdays was free.
If if we could act it out, I'd maybe pay for it. Uh yeah, this took a little out of me, man. Oh God. I give it 2 entrails out of 5.
I didn't. I mean, I'm not saying it's 4 or 5 stars, but it's definitely
You know what? I still hold to that. I still say the effects were the best part of the movie.
it. It definitely fits the Grindhouse Films format of foreign films that they would find and just bring over here that were trashy. And
I might watch The Devil's Sword because there's a good part in The Devil's Sword with this guy. He kicks a rock off the side of the mountain and then he rides the rock down into the village.
as you
Oh.
You still here? It's over. Go home. Go.